living in Japan generally, like in terms of content creators, oh my god, everyone has this perception that we're like millionaires or something. Last year I made like $3,000 for making content. Your favorite travel creators, they're not making money off of this stuff. Majority of them like have full-time jobs and they're making content, and I'm just like, it's a lot. You have to be obsessed with Japan. Like, I'm saying obsessed, and I might have to stop being a content creator.
Hey there, and thank you for tuning in. We're excited to bring you another great conversation today. If you like the show and want to support us, please hit the subscribe button so we can keep bringing you great content week after week. And if you're feeling extra generous, give this video a like and share your thoughts and comments down below. Thank you so much. And now, let's get into it. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Ananya. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
All the way from Tokyo in an early morning, very cold morning, to Osaka in our studio. We want to talk to you about your journey to Japan, which is quite recent, I think. And you've also started a big journey in content creation where you've been exploring basically identity in Japan and kind of these first impressions that a lot of people have and how they interact with Japanese culture. But before we dive into all of these small topics, I would like to know a little bit more about what brought you to Japan in the first place. Why have you decided to come here?
Yeah, I would say for me, I've been obsessed with Japan since I was a kid. So since I was 13, I think it's been almost 11 years since then. And I fell in love with Japan. There was actually a specific manga that I was reading. It was called Alice in the Country of Hearts. It's like a really specific shoujo manga. But I fell in love with it. I figured, hey, if I learn Japanese, then I can play the video game version, I can read more books. And then I just fell in love with the language, the people, the culture, everything. And then that was kind of it for, 10 or however many years. But I never lived in Japan. I'd only visited for like a homestay in high school for like 2 weeks. And then more recently, a year and a half ago, I decided to actually move to Japan.
So you discover this manga and you kind of get obsessed about this and you start learning the language, think about Japan a lot. What was it like when you actually got here the first time for that homestay experience?
Oh, yeah. I feel like, obviously I'm one of the people who like tends to like idealize Japan and be like, oh my God, it's so amazing, da da da. And you hear stories about that. And I used to watch YouTube and J-vloggers and so many things. And I was kind of like, I need to have good, proper expectations. It might not be everything I'm dreaming it will be. And I self-organized this homestay, found a girl from the internet, asked if I could stay at her house, and then I stayed in Yokohama for 2 weeks. And it was the best time ever. I think I got really lucky. It's like a family that I'm even close to this day.
Oh.
And yeah, it was incredible. I just felt like personally at that point in time, I didn't want a touristy experience. I wanted to see what it was like to actually live there with a family and what it was like to experience that. And so I visited like her school. I visited like a local school in Tsukuba as well, and I was just like blown away. Like it just felt so amazing to experience that.
Are homestays quite common here in Japan? Was it something that was hard to find? You mentioned you kind of just found this girl on the internet, but are there like platforms where people can look for various homestay options? So is it like you have to just search hard?
I wouldn't recommend it, but I used HelloTalk. And so there were a lot of like study abroad programs and stuff like that I was looking into. And my family wasn't that supportive about me learning Japanese. And so when I said that I wanted to join this program, the first one was like, no. And then the second one was, it's like too expensive. It was ridiculous. I was like, there was no way I could do it. But then homestay is something I'd heard about and I couldn't find any program with it. And so then I basically begged my friend from HelloTalk and I was like, hey, could I stay with your family for 2 weeks during summer vacation? And she's like, yeah. And then that's it. That's kind of how it happened.
You were talking about that you kind of were building up those expectations. And recently also, I think you posted maybe a few months ago this interview where you also reflected on that, where you kind of came with these high expectations of Japan is going to be amazing and all of these things are going to be so great. And then you also realize, well, some things are not as good as they seem when you watch them online.
Yes.
How did you navigate this kind of expectations, meeting expectations or failing to meet expectations?
Yeah, I think it was something I wasn't fully prepared for when I came here. And, I heard so many stories about it, but I think everyone's experience is a little different into how they feel like Japan is different from how they expect and how it like meets expectations. And for me, there were definitely like times where I didn't feel like okay, maybe, well, actually, no, I never thought that. I love Japan. Like, I still feel like I'm going to be here very long term. And with that being the baseline, like, I love this place. I love the culture. There are definitely things where it's like, oh, I didn't expect this to occur. Or like, you know, I almost did assume if I knew the language, then generally everything would be okay. But realistically, you know, you study a language for 10 years, you're not going to study how to like, you know, renew your Zydew card or like things like that, you know, and they kind of put you back into reality of like, you're an immigrant, you don't necessarily belong here. There are often people reminding you that you don't belong here. And so that's, I think, the little like gap I had with how my expectations were.
What were some of these big challenges that you first encountered when you got
Yeah,
here?
I mean, I wouldn't say any of these are like ridiculously like, you know, terrible things that occurred to me, but like, you know, I would get like rejected at restaurants every now and then.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. When I'm with like other like Indian people or like tourist friends, even if it's like a small group, sometimes we get rejected at like bars or restaurants, and it's like we're speaking Japanese, and I'm like, what? You know what I mean? So that would happen where we would go in. Like one day, we went in down to this like cellar bar, and my friend, she speaks fluent Japanese. She grew up here. She was like 3 people, right? And the staff was like, okay, sure. And then the rest of us came down, and I think she looked at every single one of us and was like, manseki desu. Like, we're full.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, you didn't even look. And then the group after us went right in. And I was just like, you know, I don't think they were full, you know?
That's
like,
not a nice experience.
yeah,
to deal
it's
with,
not
yeah.
great. But, you know, obviously I'm very privileged because I didn't experience these kinds of microaggressions. Like, I'm from San Francisco. It's a huge Asian population. And so I'm just used to, like, fitting in to a certain degree. And, you know, it was kind of like a sobering moment to, like, be in Japan and feel like, oh, they don't look at me. And, you know, even though I feel very included because I know the language, I don't, you know, there's a bit of a gap there. Yeah.
Where do you think those kind of high expectations come from of Japan? I feel like many people are watching these videos and suddenly these expectations, as you were explaining, kind of builds up, and there's this image of Japan. It's this perfect little country in the Pacific.
I think if you travel here and you're like just, you know, touring around, like it does feel perfect. It does feel incredible. And there's really no like hitch at all. It's like amazing. But I think living requires a lot more like patience because the systems are different, you know, and I think I've like grown to like terms with this. Japan has like 2,000 years of history. Like, for example, America, we barely have like a couple hundred. Like, they have done things a certain way up until now. And this is the most foreigners that have ever lived in this country. Like, I'm here at this time where they're suddenly trying to like meet that sudden switch. And so it's almost like understandable that, you know, a lot of systems won't work the way that I'd expected to, et cetera. And so I think that was kind of like the mindset shift that was required.
So what was it that after this homestay experience, you go back to the Bay Area and you decide 1.5 years ago, I'm moving now for the long term? Was there a click, something that kind of made you like, no, now is the time we have to go?
Yeah. So for me, like over college and like my early career, I had started to feel like my interest in Japan was like slowly fading as I got more involved with like life in America. And, you know, I went to college. I was working at Amazon at the time. And I was just, you know, I was really happy because I had like, you know, met my parents' expectations. Like, oh my God, they're happy. Thank God. Like, you know, and I felt like I was working at a job that I'd always dreamt about working at, you know, like I wanted to work at like a FANG company, like have all that. But I feel like once I got there, it didn't really, like I was working actually in some areas regarding Japan as well, actually. I was making ads on the Amazon Japan website, but it just didn't feel like, you know, I felt like there was more that I was aiming to do. And as soon as COVID borders opened up, like, you know, in college, I tried to go to Japan, didn't work out. Yeah. So a lot of things came and I was like, maybe I'm just not supposed to be going there. Like, I don't know at this point. But the second borders opened up, like that day, I like booked my ticket and yeah. And I don't know, in the background, I think I was always kind of setting myself up for this to happen. Like even then I went on a business trip. Technically, I was like helping out like an anime company at the time, and it was just happened to be that way. And no matter what, I feel like there's this constant pull towards Japan. And it wasn't until that trip where I visited Japan for a month, like after borders opened, that I was also interviewing with a startup. And I was like, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to live here. And so that was the step.
So did you move here for work
Yes,
eventually?
originally, yeah.
And you started at this startup you just mentioned.
Yeah, so it's a fintech startup called Woodstock Club, and they're essentially trying to like spread stock investing among young people in Japan.
Interesting, because this is kind of something that's very touchy subject
Yeah,
here,
it is, right?
Investing in Japan, the government has been trying with accounts like NISA. And iDeCo, right, to get people to invest, but young people are, this sounds risky.
It's improving because of NISA, I would say, but it's definitely nowhere near where it's supposed to be. And so I came in as the marketing lead and kind of helped to like increase the users and increase like financial literacy. But, you know, I had to make videos about like financial topics in Japanese on our Instagram, etc. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is tough, like, you know, because at the end of the day, young people, they don't have the finances at a lot of the time, nor are they ready to like invest. They're too busy on like other stuff like school or whatnot. And really trying to like fill that gap has been tough because, yeah, I think there's still a long way to go with like financial literacy in Japan.
Do you see, you were mentioning some change. Where is the change kind of coming from at the moment in this financial literacy in Japan?
Oh, I mean, I think NISA has like made huge like changes in that sense because, I mean, I did a lot of hearings with like young people and how they think about like investing, and they all know about NISA. Like they all know about it. Some of them do it. Some of them didn't really do it. Majority of them didn't even have like a My Number card.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I think you need that, like, you know. And so I think nowadays like people are gonna start using My Number card a lot more. So then hopefully that'll connect to like actually getting involved in investing and, you know, get rid of some of those like blockers for that. Yeah.
You worked for Amazon. You worked for this fintech company. Where does content creation kind of come into play? When did that start?
Good question. So my background's kind of funny. I started on Twitter in Japanese in 2020 of November. And so this is a bit of a long story, but I'd always wanted to be a YouTuber, just like anyone, you know, it's like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber someday. But I didn't really do anything. I had like maybe a couple of videos from when I was like 16 or something. And I was doing like a whole like binge of Daijiro-san's videos. Daijiro-san, he does like a ton of English, like funny videos, etc. He made a video about how a lot of Japanese people, when they go to India and they come back, they're like, jinsei kawatta. They're like, oh my God, my life changed. And I thought it was so funny. And I think I commented something like, oh, like, nanka, Nihon ni itte jinsei kawatta, mitaina. So like from an Indian perspective, I'm like, oh yeah, my life changed. And I think he found it really funny or something. When I woke up the next morning, my friend had sent me a line and was like, hey, like, I think he tweeted you out. And I was like, I don't even have Twitter. So I like downloaded it. I like checked what he said. And I had a friend who was really into social media at the time. And he's like, you need to take advantage of this chance, da da da. And I was like, okay, I'll try. And then I made an account. I like responded. And then I made like an introduction video in Japanese. And that like kind of went viral. And then I started getting followers. And like when I was in college, I was posting like 3 times a day, like at like 9 a.m., like lunchtime, and then at dinner. Like I was posting whenever I imagined like a salaryman, like, you know, spending his day. I was posting about language learning, like business stuff I was learning in school, marketing, like all sorts of stuff. And that really grew a lot. And I enjoyed like interacting with Japanese people, like about that kind of stuff. And I started making videos, and that was when TikTok was really popular. And so I jumped on a couple of trends. Those went viral. But obviously, you know, it sounds really easy, but there were a bunch of videos that did not go viral. And slowly, you know, you grow, you understand the algorithm. And then I jumped on Reels when it was pretty early as well. So that was when I was working at Amazon. And so I think I was at 107K or something by the time I quit. And then from there, it's still growing.
We had a couple of guests here as well talking about that viral moment, like Anton.
Yeah.
And it is kind of changing, Mr. Yabatan as well. When you wake up in the morning and suddenly you have 100,000 millions of views and people commenting. How was that experience for you to wake up that day and have your friend message you and you check and you're like, whoa?
It was crazy. I feel like, you know, now I'm a little bit like desensitized to it because it's just like, you know, I just think about like, okay, how do I get that again? Like, you know, but when I first got it, it was just wild because I had my like notifications on Twitter. So like every time someone liked something, I was like seeing stuff roll in.
So the phone's battery was probably dying.
Yeah, it was gone. Like I was like, whoa, this is so cool. yeah, no, it was like the first moment of interacting with someone of that like caliber as well. And, you know, I think straight off the bat, I realized like, I think social media is really cool because yes, you can reach a lot of people, but you can also connect with a lot of people that you normally wouldn't have the access to connect with. And so Twitter for me was a way to like connect with people in Japan, even though I wasn't there. And I feel like that kind of summarizes my entire journey with Japanese is like, you know, even if I'm not there, I want to make sure that I have the strongest connection possible. And I think that really came through in how I learned the language, like adapted to the culture, etc. Like that's always been the theme, I feel like.
Language learning is something that you started very early on with that interest in this manga, and also that you kind of brought into your content creation. And now I think a lot of the content you put out there is also educational, into responding to many of your followers that are asking you how to learn Japanese and how to kind of go about this. So how have you built onto that, and how have you adapted this like language learning into a social media context where time frames are short, things have to go viral, you have to get people to see it, because if you make not even a course but like a video that is teaching something but nobody watches it, it's pointless, right?
Yeah, I'm still learning like about this because I mean I think YouTube is like kind of what I want to focus on, and it's tough to really like get your message across. But for me, like I mean I just love making skits. Like they're so fun. I was inspired by Richardo. And honestly, like the first year I was doing TikTok, I was just looking at his videos and I was like, what's like a version of that I can make that's like true to me? And then I would just go off of that and just make more and more skits. And so I think it's just fun to like blend language learning with something you enjoy. And in my case, it was like comedy. And I was like, okay, let's see how we can do this. And sorry, what was your question?
The question was how do you blend in the language learning
Gotcha.
and kind of introduce this in a social media context?
Okay, yeah, I think language learning is tough to like boil down into like a couple minutes. But I feel like, you know, everyone can be like, oh, like learn hiragana, katakana, like, oh, learn this, da 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 da. And so I felt like, I don't know, what really speaks true to people is hearing other people's experiences and then kind of like getting some inspiration from that. And so then I just try and like remember how I learned and like share that information as much as possible, but then also blend it in a way that they can still like study from my videos, you know, like just by watching them, like get exposed to the language and stuff. And then also like if you don't speak much Japanese, it's tough to like watch really really Japanese content and try to understand it because it's just so different. So you kind of need something that's going to be in the middle and still like, you know, digestible and like in English and Japanese, but it's like niche, you know, like you won't really see it anywhere else. So I use like ridiculous words that like you probably don't see day to day, but I just like it, and that's just, you know.
And then people remember that.
Yeah, and people remember that, and I feel like it's easier to learn like the really weird, complicated words early on because you don't really know what you're learning. Like I remember my favorite word when I was starting was like uketsuke. I was like, why? Like it's just like receptionist. Like it doesn't really make that much sense. But I was like, this is a cool word and it sounds complicated, but it's really easy to remember for some reason.
Yeah, phonetically maybe.
Yeah, maybe that too.
What was your process then? If we had to summarize this, and if a lot of your followers are now curious, like, okay, what was Ananya's process to learn Japanese, and you had to kind of give a step by step. Did you have a step by step, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, I basically just like downloaded every single app I could find on the App Store, and then I also looked up how to learn Japanese, and I looked at both sides, and I was like, okay, I just looked for like the similar points in everything I was looking at. Okay, it sounds like you have to learn hiragana and katakana before you really start anything. It can be done fairly fast, a month or so. And then I also looked into like, okay, do I learn grammar first? Do I learn vocabulary first? And I literally just followed these websites to a T, and I just did exactly what they were saying. But then also making sure that I was doing input and output. And I had a lot of time. I was a middle school kid. Like I had nothing else I was doing. So every day I come back home, I would like practice writing like hiragana, like making flashcards. And, you know, it's a little hazy now because it's been so much time. But I would do a lot of practice sentences. I had a little notebook. And then I made like one friend. I think he was like an oji-chan from like Osaka actually. Oh. And there used to be a website called Lang8. And in there, I would post like little journal entries, and other people could correct those sentences and stuff like that. And so I would make like sample sentences, so like using what I was learning very quickly, and then do like, I think it's like 30-minute call like once every 2 weeks or so, and then like output that in like verbally. and just like using it a lot, and then just learning, using, and then just rinse and repeat is kind of how I did it.
It seems like you really put a lot of time into that.
Yeah.
What kind of mindset does someone need to kind
that's a good
do
question.
this and really, it nearly feels like you powered through. You just like obsessively every day practice your Japanese, learn your Japanese because you wanted to get to this level.
Yeah. You have to be obsessed with Japan. Like, I'm saying obsessed. Like, I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, like as a kid. But every day, like in my head, this is kind of weird. That's why I don't talk about it. But like, I would literally say, I love Japan, like in my head every single day. And I felt like that level of thinking was required to get to what I was trying to do. I don't necessarily know why I did that. But looking back, I think like maybe it's like similar like manifestation or something. But it's like you need to kind of let your thoughts be completely filled with that topic to really like dig into it and be willing to spend that kind of time. And I would also do a lot of like visualization of what it would be like once I speak in Japanese, and what I would want to do in Japan and all these different things. And I would live vicariously through YouTube videos, I don't know, exploring the city or whatever it is. Like I used to watch like the 24/7 like live cam of the Shibuya crossing. Like, isn't that so random? I just feel like I just wanted to be there so badly. And I think maybe that's why I was so passionate, because I was unable to go for so long. Like, I didn't go until like 5 years within learning. And to be honest, I don't think my Japanese has improved that much after like that first like 3 to 5 years. Like, you learn the most in that time.
What was it in that manga that really really hooked you so much that you got to this obsessive level of wanting to go to Japan and learn the language?
I think it's all manga. Like, it wasn't even just that one version. It was just like art in general, because I grew up doing art my whole life. And so then I remember like my middle school dream was to be a mangaka. So obviously I was like kind of thinking about that and like how that would look like. And I made like a manga too, like in middle school. And that obsession of just like art and just like how blown away I was by it is kind of what governed a lot of how I was thinking about Japan and why I wanted to learn so badly. It just felt like, it just felt like a different world, and I had to be there,
Now you're kind of analyzing this world through your lens of someone who's moved here recently, and you're turning this into skits.
Yeah.
How do you come up with those ideas? How do you write your skits? How much time does it take for you to kind of make something?
I don't know. I like just think about what would be the funniest situation right now. Like, if I heard, like, for example, I had one video where I was like Japanese in 2024, and I said the word like mutual understanding, and someone was saying that in a meeting is kind of the setting that I was doing it at. Someone was actually saying that like in a cafe I was at, and I actually wanted to like burst out laughing because I thought it was so funny. And so then I just have this long like notes page in my app, like in the notes app. It just says ideas. Every single day I'm adding something to it. And I feel like that's like a good habit to have, whether you're going to start a business or like, be creative, like just write down things like immediately. And for me, like, I don't know, I just feel like I have tons of ideas every day. And if I don't write them down, I just like kind of go crazy. So, yeah.
So you pick up on things around you, you take notes, and then one day you're like, okay, this is a concept, this could be a video. Do you write it out then, or do you just improvise?
I'm like a ridiculously unorganized person, and so for me, like I feel like another person could look at that notes app and be like, what does this even say? And so then I kind of flesh it out on the spot and make sure that it's something that I can like work with, because if it's just like a half-baked idea, I never go through with it. So then fairly like write out the idea, and when I'm actually filming down, I usually sit down like once or twice a week, like start to film. And that's totally even like the days that I film are based on like whether I have makeup on that day, or you know what I mean? Like, it's like if I don't, I'm not going to go out of my way to like do that. Although some days I had to. And so I'd have 2 days I film, and I look at like, okay, what's the stock? Like, what do I have? And then I go with those videos. But I do know some creators, they like put their scripts in like Excel sheets and like organize it and all that. And for me, I used to try and do that for Twitter, and I just don't know. I just stop making things all together. Like the second that there's like organization, and it's kind of messed up. But like I feel like it just helps to just be messy, and sometimes the scripts aren't great, which I acknowledge, and so I think it's like a constant like improvement thing where I try and make it better.
Do you make those comedy videos for a specific audience in mind? Are you trying to interact more with a Japanese audience or more like a foreign audience, or you are looking for both?
Yeah, I feel like there's a misconception that my audience is very Japanese. It's like not Japanese at all. Like my audience is like majority like Americans, like Indians, and then I think Japanese people. And so when I make these skits, to be honest, like I think the skits are the one thing that I don't really care like who's watching it, and I just hope that someone's watching and like has a similar passion for Japan, or I feel like if they like Japan, they want to see it in like another lens. And I feel like the goal of what I create as a content creator too is like, I just want to like show people Japan through my lens, because I think that passion, like whatever I had when I was 13, like it's kind of morphed and changed over the years, but it was very pure. And I think that lens is something that I think can inspire other people, hopefully. So I just do what I genuinely find funny. And I feel like when I was watching Richa, those videos, you could really tell that was just stuff that he enjoyed and wanted to share with people. And I feel like that brings out the best in people. So ideally, I'd like to make all my content very like fun and creative and me.
Comedy is an interesting means of communicating and an interesting lens to look at things, because usually you'll pick up on like a conversation in a cafe and then possibly exaggerate it a little bit to kind of bring out some laughter and so on. But comedy also is very different in different cultures. How was the reception from the audience, or how have the viewers of those videos interacted with it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's different based on platform. And, whether they're coming from this country or that country, it's like very like different. But I feel like I relate the most with like people who live in Japan and they comment on these videos and they're like, yeah, I totally get it. I'm like, yes. That being said, I think the way that I've created these videos, they've kind of tailored more towards like Gen Z, millennial audience, and they're much more like I don't know, like snappy. And I feel like I could do different kinds of style, but I think it really appeals to that kind of form of content. And so naturally, I feel like people who watch like, they tend to watch like anime, they know about Japan. And I mean, everyone's just been generally nice. And yeah.
You mentioned it changes quite a lot depending on the platform. Right?
Yeah,
like TikTok, Instagram, different feedback.
It's very different. I would say Instagram and TikTok have been quite similar. I don't get as many comments on TikTok, so I don't really like notice too much. But Instagram, I always I like look at everything, and people really like to play around with the ideas. And my favorite comments are when people like just like make it into their own like joke or like something like that. It's like the best feeling ever. YouTube though, like I've posted a lot of my reels onto shorts. I just think there needs to be more context. I think YouTube viewers like more context in terms of what they're watching, which makes sense. And so like with Instagram, I think people just like to see a random, it's like peeking into a window, you just see like a little scene of something. You don't really know what's going on, but you're like, okay, cool. And so it doesn't work as well. And I think the comments have been more like, I don't get it, but hey, I don't really mind.
Do you have any favorite videos that you've enjoyed making, or skits that you would recommend people to watch if they were finding your account for the first time?
I mean, to be honest, I think a lot of my content's like kind of cringy. Like, I don't think it's that funny, but sometimes I think it's really funny. And I like to just like keep making that cringy content and then hopefully get like more like fun content. I think the Demure video series that I put out, like the trend is like completely over, and by the third video, the comment section was horrible. Like people were like, "Stop, the joke's over," and I was like, "Okay, sorry." But I really liked it, and it was really fun because I got to be as creative as I wanted, and I love wordplay and just like mixing things up. I saw this guy on TikTok. He was American and spoke Chinese fluently.
Okay.
And so he did this, and so I was like, no one's doing this in Japanese. Like, I should just try and see what happens. And it went super viral. I think it had like 5 or 7 million views each video, and I was like, whoa, like that's super cool. And people to this day are like, oh, you're like the demure girl. I was like, what the? Like, okay, hey, it's over. The trend's over. Like,
So what was that like for you? Now you go viral, you have an account that's growing, you have a face that's very recognizable now on the internet, and people that are watching content related to Japan for sure have seen one of your reels kind of pass through their feed at one point or another, right? How do you deal with this on a personal level to kind of now be let's say public personality where people might recognize you, interact with you, or have some expectations?
I don't think I have I haven't fully acknowledged it, to be honest. I think it's cool because, like, you know, I go to places and people recognize me and stuff, but it's not anything like, you know, I think I try not to acknowledge it too much. And, you know, it's just like, I'm so honored when people come up to me and they're like, you know, I watch your videos, I love it. But like, I feel like I'm on a constant pursuit to just like make better videos. And, you know, if they're really something that I'm satisfied, if someone comes up to me, I'd just be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for watching it, you know? And yeah, I think it's tough in some ways. I know a lot of my friends who have quit being content creators because, you know, it can be really overwhelming. And I think for me, like, this year was definitely a test of that. I think I definitely hit like a certain point where I was like, okay, I don't know where I am right now or who I am. It wasn't like I hit like huge popularity or anything. It was just like, you know, getting more hate comments over time and just feeling like, you know, it's just like, you know, it's a little bit unsettling. I think hate comments definitely got to me, you know, even as much as people say like, you don't care, like da da da, like I do care because I make content that, you know, I want other people to enjoy.
I cannot really imagine what it must feel like. You make a video that is comedy. It's intended to make people laugh or enjoy or ignore it if they don't like it. But then some people, usually maybe sometimes trolls, but sometimes people that are just ill-intentioned, go out of their way to write something very, very mean. How do you process? How do you deal with this? How do you, you know, like you were just saying, people say, oh, just ignore it. These people are haters, blah, blah, blah. But if you read it and you put effort into that content and it's you they're talking about, it's difficult to just put aside.
Yeah, I just don't read them. But it's tough. I still read them because I'm trying to work really hard on YouTube right now. And so it's just like a, you know, like every time I make a video, it's like a new thing, right? So like my focus is going to the next thing, which can, I think that process is very overwhelming too. Like I feel like for content creators, I'm like, how do you guys like not go crazy? Like, you know, it's like at the beginning, like every DM that I would get, like I would respond to every single one. I'd be like, you know, sharing my learning tips, etc. And then now it's like at a point where I'm never caught up. I'm never, you know,
just too many
even my friends, they're like, when are you going to reply? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's just too much for me right now. And so I think there's a certain level of like just being overwhelmed. I don't know how people like handle that kind of thing. Hate comments, I feel like they get to me sometimes. They don't get to me sometimes. But at the end of the day, like it's probably just some troll like just like at his keyboard or her keyboard. So it doesn't really matter to me. So yeah.
So this year was a test year for you, and there was a point where you started questioning where you were.
Yeah.
How did you make it through? What was the thing that kind of got you over that tip and like, okay, now I'm focused again, I'm going forward?
I think it's like a constant battle, and it made me realize for the first time like how important mental health is. This was literally last month, by the way. Like okay. I'm getting over this now. But I think it's like, you know, I didn't realize, but you know, I don't think like the content stuff really affects me that much. I think I'm very much able to like separate myself from like the identity that I have on social media. And I think that's super important to do because it's not me, you know, like it's like only like a small part of me. And people always are like, oh, you're like very like chill in person and like, you know, you're very different in some ways, but also very similar. And so I think it's important, one, to like separate yourself, and then two, to just like create boundaries. I think content creators, you know, majority of them like have full-time jobs and they're making content, and I'm just like, it's a lot, and you know, it takes a lot of effort, and I think if you're like a workaholic, it can really get to you. And I think it did get to me at some points last month, and I didn't realize for the first time. Like, this is such a like important topic. Like, I don't think you realize when it gets to you and what
just
like
creeps up little by little, and suddenly it's there.
It's terrifying. I never realized it, and I realized I never made breaks for myself. I don't think I had like a single weekend like for a couple of weeks, And I was just like, wait, that's not normal. So yeah, I love to like hustle. Like I just really want to work hard, but I realized I had to like set some boundaries. So that's what I've been doing this month, and it's been improving.
You mentioned YouTube a couple of times, and
Yeah.
early on as well, that this is kind of where you want to shift your focus to
Yeah.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Why the shift to YouTube, which is more like a long form platform, although YouTube is also actively trying to push more short form content now?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like if I can go viral and like, get my content out there on YouTube Shorts, like, I've had long conversations with other creators about this. I would love to. It's just, I think what the algorithm is on YouTube and on other short platforms, it's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't fully grasped it yet. But like, for example, I did a collab with Dogan. I think maybe
He's coming next Tuesday.
Oh, no way. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, 2 years ago, I think when I was in college or something, right when I graduated, he found me and he was like, I think you should do YouTube, da 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 da. And I was like, like it's just a lot of work. I don't think I really want to do this right now. And I was like, oh my God, he was right. Like, I just think YouTube is the only platform that's really like lived through all of these, like almost like over a decade, like supporting creators. And it's a really important platform to have to connect with your community, because as much as I love making videos on Instagram, I don't feel like I have like a full community that I'm creating where I'm really involved with like my followers. And I feel like that's really the next step and the ideal place to be, because I can only share so much of my life in like 1 minute. Like it's really, and it seems so like I try not to be too like, oh, my life's perfect on social media, because it's really not. It's just, I think it's important to like share that, but it's like social media can just feel like not the place to do that too at times.
What kind of content do you want to do on YouTube now?
Yeah.
Because it's very different, right? You have more time, you have the community to build, so you can interact with people.
I don't know.
I
don't know. So that's the fun part, right? Because I get to test out a lot of things. So one exciting video that I'm doing that's coming up next week is I met like the CEO of Fujikyu Highland, and he was like, Mr. Beast like came to our amusement park, and it was such a cool video. Like, hey, if you want to do something, like let us know. And I was like, okay, how about like I ride 3 roller coasters with 3 strangers? Let's see how that goes. And so we're filming that.
Cool.
Just like trying stuff. But I think personally I'd love to like do more like vlogs and just like lifestyle videos, because I feel like just sharing my life, I think, is more relatable, and I feel like that's something that people can enjoy. So I'm just going to try a lot of different things.
One of the videos you recently tried was kind of interviewing people with Indian background in Tokyo, and kind of share their experience. This is something I'm a little bit interested as well, because I think there's quite a large community of people from India here in Japan. And you yourself were born in India, I think, originally.
Yes.
So how has that experience been for you and for them? What kind of insights have you gained?
Oh, from the interviews? Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people that I interviewed were Indian or like from Bangladesh, and they grew up in Japan, was like kind of the majority. Other people were those like me who, came from like London or America and like moved here. But I also know a lot of people who grew up in India and then moved out to Japan. So everyone has like different paths, right? And I think it's like the age-old, not age-old, but it's tough because the way foreigners are seen in Japan really differs, I think, based on your ethnicity. And I think a lot of the people that I interviewed highlighted that. Other than that, like it's the typical like gaijin experiences, like you just, the gaijin seed or stuff like that. Like I think that's pretty common. But I think those were the things. But otherwise, there's a lot of like benefits in terms of like the stereotypes. People tend to think Indian people are really smart in Japan. They tend to think we can do math really well. I went to school in America. I suck at math. And so I think there's a difference there. But yeah, so it's nice to have people think I'm really smart, which I appreciate. But yeah, I think that's a good part.
You mentioned some of these challenges being here as a person from India, and you also gave that example earlier about going to the bar and being rejected and that being an occurrence.
Yeah.
Is this something you notice a lot? Is it rare? Is it something that's very explicit, or sometimes just coming from misunderstandings?
I think it's like fairly rare. I don't think I know anyone else who has experienced that too much. But most Indian people that I ask, they generally, a lot of them do have this experience. It really depends though. I think it's also a result of over tourism as well. Actually, I'm like pretty confident it's probably because of that. And so, you know, it's not too common, but I think, yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Being someone with a multicultural background, now living in another country as well.
Yeah.
Have you found a place in Tokyo that's kind of making you feel home? That is like, this is my spot. This is my area.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think coming to Japan has made me like question a lot about my identity as well. Because, you know, I grew up in America, I'm basically American. And, you know, coming here, Japanese people just ask me about India all the time. And I've never lived there. I only visit relatives there. And so it's like, I'm kind of like, like I
And when you go there, it changes your life, right?
Yeah, yeah. When you go there, it changes your life. So it's like, you know, there's a lot of facets to it. But it's like, also, I'm from South India. I speak Telugu. Most Japanese people don't go to South India. They go to like Delhi or something like that. And it's like, I am like, okay, well, there's nothing to relate here on. But then at the same time, I have like my American background. And, you know, I was so obsessed with Japan that I kind of feel like a part of me is really connected with Japanese culture, even though it obviously doesn't look like it. But I would say my community in Japan in the first half year, I wasn't really, I feel like it's like this weird, like, kind of progression you have to go through. Like the first 3 months are like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Honeymoon.
Like, yeah, honeymoon period. It's like you don't really think about anything. You're just having fun. And then the next 3 months, it's like, wait, I don't really have a community or anyone to rely on. And then the next 3 months, you're just kind of looking for that and searching for it, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, I don't know how long. And then now I kind of feel like it's starting to come together. Like I've met, you know, I feel like in Tokyo, it's like incredible people. Like everyone, it's like, if you're brand new here, they will all just like bring you into their communities and be like, hey, like you can hang out with us, da-da. And I felt so like such a warm, like, you know, embrace from everyone. And so now I feel like for me, a lot of the communities that I go into are like creative based or like startup based or just like people that I connect with. And I just feel like, oh my God, this is so fun. And from college, we had a lot of like study abroad students and like friends that had like transferred from like community college in California to like Berkeley, where I came from. And, you know, my like senpai from our Japan club, like in college, like live here now. And so it's kind of cool to like reconnect with these people and like feel like I do have people who have known me since I was like 18, 19.
So the feeling of home seems to not be like a place, but more like a community that kind of makes you feel at home.
Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, in my life, I feel like a lot of things have happened where I didn't really feel like I had that space. And now I feel like it's kind of coming together in like a interesting kind of way. Yeah.
You mentioned that you kind of have an affinity for some things from Japanese culture. What are some of these things that you really picked up now that you've been living here for a year and a half and you kind of start realizing or catching yourself picking up these kind of typical habits that maybe you were thinking about before, observing in your videos, and now you're like, oh, I'm doing it myself as well?
I think, for example, I mean, this isn't like a specific thing, but when I saw my friends after a year or so, they were like, you're doing like the whole like nod thing, like, oh yeah, or like 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 that kind of thing. And I think it like starts to become a little bit more like immediate response to like everything. I guess I've been doing that more. I also do notice that, I just noticed this like the other day, but I can kind of understand why it's so hard to pronounce like the L's and R's for Japanese people. Because once you start speaking Japanese like every single day, like it's kind of hard suddenly when you speak English. It's like
your tongue starts moving differently.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was just like blown away the other day when it happened to me. And I was like, okay, I can kind of empathize now with how different English and Japanese are. But I don't think I do anything like specifically very Japanese-esque. I feel like I've just been trying to make this place a blend of home and Japan. So I've been prioritizing that as well.
Before we started recording, you mentioned to me that you also kind of started venturing into setting up your own company here and kind of building something beyond just social media. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I used to like be in Japanese speech contests and stuff. And I would always say that like my dream is to connect Japan with America via business. And that's why I studied business in college. All my essays were about Japan. And like that was kind of the main focus. Like I wanted to do something in business. However, I don't know exactly what that is, but I figured, even if I don't know what I want to do as a business, I think it's important to have a voice, have an audience, and the rest will come. And so that's kind of what I did in the last like 2 to 3 years to like kind of build that. But it wasn't, I was just being creative. And so I figured, okay, now that I'm kind of here and I switched visas and I left my previous startup job, I want to build a business. I don't know what that will be, but I did launch a Japanese course, a beginner Japanese course called Japanese with Ananya. And, I really just put my heart and soul into it. And I wanted to see it as a test to really see if people wanted it. Because I get messages every single day like, are you teaching Japanese? Da, da, da. And I was like, I'm not a teacher. And then I just kind of thought about it a little bit. And I was like, people want to learn from me because, one, I taught myself. I'm not a native speaker. I look like this. I look like a foreigner. And I've been able to sound fluent and have a strong pronunciation. And I'm not perfect by any means. But I think that's inspiring to people. And that's kind of like the standout thing that I can focus on in this course, like speaking. And so I think with that being a test, I kind of realized, okay, I like kind of built some confidence, and I really believe in taking small steps and like to get where you're trying to go. And that was one test, and I feel like down the line with like a company in Japan and the USA is my plan. And I've done marketing up until now in my career, so I think I want to do something marketing focused, whether it's an agency or something else. And then maybe down the line when I'm like 30 or 40, like I do want to do a startup. And for me, like the number one thing I wanted to do in Japan is fix the work culture. Like that's something that if I can even like mildly improve, that's like a huge like achievement in my life.
Yeah. Is this an experience that you've had here as well when you kind of first started working and facing this harsh work culture at times?
Yeah, I mean, I personally didn't experience it too much because I worked at like a gaishike, so it was like very foreign leaning. But when I did my homestay in Japan in Yokohama, I just remember seeing like my friend's mom, like just like, sleeping by like the food that she made for her husband as he comes home every night at like 12 a.m. or something. And I didn't even see her dad during my entire homestay because he was just so busy with work. And that just blew me away considering like how low the productivity rates are in relation to like the amount that they're working. And I think I wrote a couple papers in college, and I'm not too brushed up on the subject now, but I think at the time I just felt a really strong desire to be like, okay, if there's something that I can change, I feel like it's here and I'm very passionate about it. And so like life's goal is to really like make some sort of like significant impact in Japan in that sense.
And so kind of finding ways for you to bring a little bit of change or kind of new ideas to this work culture. Do you have some ideas already on how or what you'd like to tackle there? Or is this kind of still just a big idea?
This is a much more like down the line, big picture thing. And I think for now, I really want to just like build a business and learn all those skills first.
You've been here for a year and a half. For some, that's a long time. For others, it's a very short time. For you, who has been dreaming about moving to Japan for so long and now being here and kind of seeing the prospect of staying longer, how do you feel?
I want to be here long term.
Yeah.
I think I never grew up away from home, really. Always been in the Bay Area. It's like an incredible place. But I think long term here is just like, it just feels like the right place to be. And I don't know, I do see myself going back and forth a lot. Going back and forth, I might live in America for a bit as well. So very up in the air, but I want to be in both places, ideally.
You have a lot of plans.
Yeah, I do.
You have. You were saying earlier you're very disorganized. How are you gonna approach kind of managing all the social media, building YouTube, building the company?
Yeah.
Are you starting to work with people? Are you still doing everything by yourself?
So right now I do everything by myself. Hence probably why I burnt out last month. So I am thinking about whether I do need people to work with, and if I can really build a team, I think I can scale a lot of this like impact that I can make, and it's really important. But right now, I'm just like trying to learn everything. So that's why it's really important that I do it by myself. So that way, I can still always step in and like do it by myself as well.
Looking back at all your experience and everything you've done so far, and we talked about how many messages you get and so on. Do you feel like there are any big misconceptions that people kind of come up with regularly about the experience in Japan or being a content creator that you want to kind of dispel?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay. I feel like living in Japan generally, like I think I was really honest with you about like my experiences, and I don't want to be like known as like the person who's like always talking about like the bad sides of Japan, because I don't think there's just, it's like the good sides like clearly outweigh any small little bad things. Like I get to walk around safely at night. I get to do whatever I want. Like it's an incredible life to have here, and that's why people tend to stay. It's like the safety and security. But I will say, in terms of content creators, like, oh my God, I feel like everyone has this perception that we're like millionaires or something. And I talk to so many creators and I love to like connect with all of them. Like, it's not like that glamorous at all. Like, especially in Japan. I feel like if you guys have your favorite travel creators or something like that, like, they're majority of the time paying for their own transportation, kind of like not going into debt, but like they're not making money off of this stuff. They're genuinely just doing it because they want to enjoy Japan and explore. And I was talking to a friend who was like, I don't think I can afford to keep doing this anymore, and I might have to stop being a content creator. And so I feel like I'd really like to dispel that, because I think like last year I made like $3,000 from making content, like total. And I was like, oh, it's a lot lower than I thought. Like I cannot live off of this wage.
No, $3,000 is probably not enough to sustain a living, especially not if you're in the US. But in Japan, it can help.
Definitely
it could
not.
go a little bit further, but still.
Yeah, and so it's definitely like like over time, hopefully like it gets better, and that's kind of also why I think YouTube is so important for creators, because it gives you like more monetization, support, etc. And I always want to advocate for that for other people and creators that I'm friends with. We all just like we share like, okay, how much are you pricing? Like how much are you like getting for this? Like we try and be as supportive to each other as possible, which is why I love the creator community here. It's like it's very scattered, so there's different groups everywhere, but we're all trying to help each other, and that's like the best part.
Well, yeah, you have to kind of establish the market for Japan content creators and kind of all be on the same page and help each other out if you want to be able to make a sustained living from it.
Yeah.
I think that's a very true misconception most people have. And maybe it was overblown over the last few years during COVID, perhaps, where everyone was at home and content creators were maybe getting bigger deals.
Maybe.
But now the market is very saturated too, so the deals are kind of more difficult to get. And so.
I also think it's like a US thing. Like obviously I always make content about Japan, so it's definitely a little bit different. If I made content about only makeup or something, maybe it's like a different story. So there is that difference there. Depending on the industry, it's like completely different.
I'm curious about this. So these misconceptions coming from the audience quite often, but also you were mentioning having an audience in Japan, in the US, but also like a big audience in India. What are people from that audience interested in Japan and kind of asking about?
Oh, I mean, I think the most common question I get is like, oh, where do I go? Like, what do I do? Like, I'm going to be in Tokyo for like 4 days. Like, and so I think everyone, they want to have like a unique experience in Japan. And so it's really just like showing people like all the different things you can do. And I had 10 of my best friends visit me in Japan recently, and it was a similar thing where they were impressed by like all the touristy spots, but they really fell in love with just like walking on the streets of Kyoto and like doing their own thing. And I think for anyone visiting, like that's kind of what really makes or breaks their experience, like the interactions they have with locals, etc. And so, yeah, I think that's a common thing I get. Other stuff will be like, oh, how do I learn Japanese? Like, how do I do this? And it's actually so cute. Like when I first launched my course, or like before I did like a wait list or like a beta like sign up form or something. And I was reading through everyone's like reasons. Is like, why do you want to learn Japanese? I was curious. And a bunch of people, they're like, oh yeah, like my boyfriend's Japanese or my girlfriend's Japanese, and I want to like learn the language so I can talk to their parents or their grandparents. Or like I want to move here for a job, like or like my grandfather speaks it, or like, it was just like everyone had such a heartfelt reason. And the people that I meet that speak incredible Japanese, they all have like this like pinpoint moment that they can talk about where they're like, yeah, that was like the moment that I just wanted to,
like a manga.
Yeah, like a manga, but it's also like the desire to talk to other people. And like when you speak a language, you unlock like a whole side of yourself. You unlock a whole side of a world that you can connect with. And like that's like a video game. Like that's so cool that you can, change your life in that sense. So.
It's interesting that in the end, regardless of where people are from, India, the US, or elsewhere, they kind of come back to the same interests when it comes towards Japan. I want to learn the language because of these reasons, manga or something else, or I want to travel there. Where do I go? What do I do? And in the end, it's not so different.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ananya.
Thank you
for coming.
Yeah,
we talked about quite a few topics. I'm sure we could kind of dive deeper into many more areas. Do you feel like we covered your experience quite well? Was there anything that you wanted to share today that maybe I didn't get to ask about?
No, I think you got everything. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for making time, and I hope that next week you will enjoy Fuji Q and riding the different roller coasters. Are you a roller coaster person at all?
I like roller coasters, but I'm not excited for this one. I'm like terrified, so yeah.
Well, by the time this goes out, you'll probably have already done the experience, so you can let us know how it went.
If I'm alive, I'll let you know.
Sure,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back again next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on future conversations. And we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, here are a couple more that we think you'll enjoy. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you next time.